Alright guys, I'm in a 400 horsepower Lotus Emira right now, but it's actually not the power that's necessarily making this car so fun to drive. And in my prior video, talking about what 88% of car enthusiasts get wrong, a lot of you guys had some brilliant comments, and I want to address some of them and elaborate on them, because horsepower isn't always the answer. Now this car, I love it, right? Double wishbone, front and rear, hydraulic steering, 6-speed manual transmission, mid-engine rear-wheel drive with great balance and excellent communication. And the 400 horsepower is a nice thing to have, but like a recipe, one single ingredient doesn't make or break a dish. It is everything added together in a very intentional and balanced way that makes for a good driving experience. One commenter said it excellently. He said, horsepower is easy to understand, not turn-in, not weight balance, not rotation, but power is a very easy to quantify, easy to measure and compare metric, which is why we focus on it. How are you going to talk about how easy or difficult it is to rotate a car? You can't talk about polar moment of inertia, weight balance, etc., but that's obviously not as easy to understand and compare as something like horsepower. But when you start getting more experience behind the wheel, and you start playing with trail braking, the weight transfer, getting weight on the nose, helping it turn in more, and start dancing with the car, even there, getting a little bit of rotation on throttle input, those things require some experience and some time behind the wheel. Oh, beautiful rotation. Just right at the point where you're getting a bit of yaw without needing to counter steer. Love that. But horsepower is just easy to understand, and that's why we overly focus on it. But it's not that power itself is an issue. It's, as one other commenter said, it's the price of power. Power doesn't come for free, and I love that, because if you could take my Mazda Miata, which has less than 200 horsepower, right around 181 horsepower, you could magically, I just throw some money at it and all of a sudden it has more power with no cost of reliability or weight or anything else. Of course, I would love that. But that's not how the real world works. There's always some trade-off when it comes to engineering these things. And when you add more power, that usually comes with more weight. You need more cooling, suspension, brakes, etc. that can handle the added power and the added weight. And these things snowball. So you don't just take a light car and magically give it 1,000 horsepower. That's not how it works. Lighter cars are going to be lower on power because they have smaller, lighter engines as well. That even applies to power delivery. We're powered by the 2GR FE Toyota V6 engine that has a supercharger on it. And superchargers are great in that you have a very linear throttle response and power delivery. Turbo engines, on the other hand, you can actually make more power from a turbo, but the issue with the turbo is that there is more of a cost. There is generally some degree of turbo lag. You don't have that same immediacy with the throttle as you're trying to dance and balance the car on the knife's edge. Oftentimes you're paying a larger price in terms of sound as well. And a naturally aspirated, high-revving, powerful engine is unfortunately less and less common these days. And this is why I absolutely adore cars like the GR86 and the Mazda Miata. I own a GR86, I own a FRS, and I still own a Miata. And it's because they're stripping away the stuff that doesn't matter. And they're giving you communication. They're giving you balance, purity. And I'd argue that's more important than just power. Now, it's also not fully accurate to say that it's only, if you strip away power from a car and make it lighter, that it's magically good. That's also not quite the case, because there are certain vehicles that are just built with a different ethos and a different philosophy. You look at a lot of American muscle cars. Like, you get a base Challenger, and it's going to be lighter than the Hellcat or whatever. It still doesn't drive in a very nimble way, right? The ethos of that car wasn't about, a tight polar moment of inertia, a low center of gravity, very precise and balanced and delicate inputs. Obviously not. So it's when you take the ethos of having a driver's focused vehicle with excellent inputs, one-to-one, sharp, feedback, immediacy, etc., and combining that with some degree of power, that you have incredible vehicles like what I consider one of the best and most fun vehicles you can get for around 100K, at least new, the Lotus Emira, and several Porsches as well, like the Caymans. Which actually brings us to the next point. Someone asked me, would you really pick a Miata over a Cayman or an M2? And some of the time, actually, yes. Because here's the thing. Back when I was in medical school, the Porsche Cayman GT4, the 981, was my attainable dream car. I said, hey, when I finish plastic surgery residency, I'm going to buy that car. And now that I'm an MD, the car I bought was not a Cayman GT4. It's actually the Lotus Emira. And it's not because the Cayman GT4 is not a great car. It just doesn't emphasize and prioritize the things that matter to me most. That's why. Now, that's the GT4, which if the Emira wasn't around, I'd probably still have gone for a Cayman GT4. Maybe an Evora GT. But when you get to the lower level Caymans, the base, the S, a lot of them don't speak to me in quite the same way because I want delicacy, I want immediacy, I want communication, and the Cayman is an excellent and balanced car. Bro, why are you crossing the double yellow? I do not understand. You guys know that I drive in a spirited fashion and I don't cross the double yellow. I don't know why. I really just don't understand it. But the lower level Caymans, they can feel a bit clinical and a bit. They don't have bad steering, right? They have good E-Pass, but it's nothing compared to this hydraulic rack, as an example, right? So the Miata, would I pick that over a lower level Cayman? Actually, yeah, because I think the steering of the Miata is better. It's much lighter, and in terms of purity, in terms of communication, in terms of what I want to dance with the car, it delivers a bit more of that. The M2, it's a charted up 2 Series. It's not actually a sports car built from the ground up, so it's actually also in kind of a different category than either the Cayman or the Miata. And there was one M2 I drove not too long ago. I was comparing it against an Integra Type S. You can find that video right up here. That BMW M2 really spoke to me. That was, oh my god, I've never driven an M2 that drove that well. The communication, the suspension tuning, oh my god, that was phenomenal, excellent. But that took a lot of money in mods. I mean, the suspension alone was like more than $6,000, right? So that car is still heavier. It still pays some price for that level of performance. But would I choose like my stock Miata over that? Probably not. That M2 was excellent, but a base M2, even a regular M2 competition, without modifying it, I would choose a stock Miata over a stock M2 or M2 comp. But that's just me based on my priorities. You may choose something else, and that's fine. It's not just about what is better on paper, because when you say a car is better or worse, you're generally comparing it based on some performance metrics. But things like feel, feedback, you can't quantify those and say which one is better based on a spec sheet. This Emira, as an example, is worse than the Cayman in a lot of performance metrics, in polish, in refinement, in reliability. But it gives me this level of feel, communication, and theater that a Cayman GTS 4.0 simply doesn't. Oh, and I mean, even, you guys probably can't tell from the camera right now, but even as I'm just lightly getting on the brake mid-corner, doing a bit of trail braking, I can feel the back end wanting to rotate with me. It is just such a communicative car. I can play with it and dance with it in a way below the limit as well. That is so fun. And the Caymans, I love the Cayman, the GT4, the GT4 RS, even the GTS 4.0, excellent cars. But for me, they're cars that I need to be pushing a lot harder to find enjoyment. This car I'm able to enjoy well below the limit as well. On track, I would take a Cayman over an Emira any day. Any day. Better engine, more confidence inspiring, better balance, etc. But on the street, I find these just to be, such money. Such good 6 to 7 tenths cars. Another commenter had an awesome analogy that when kids are young, they just love sweet, sugary things. One-dimensional, bam, overpower me with sugar, I love it. But as you get older, your palate develops and you start enjoying you know, the acidity, the bitterness, the balance, as these different flavors and textures come together. And it's not just about overpowering sweetness. In fact, what you liked as a kid, you probably don't like anymore as an adult. And many times the taste of cars follows a similar journey where as you're younger, you either don't have driving experience, or maybe you've only ever driven your parents', you know, Camry or Lexus or whatever, and you focus on just power because that's all you know. That's similar to a child loving sugar. You're focused on that one-dimensional thing. And you get into the powerful 300, 400 horsepower car, and you're like, wow, this is incredible. But over time, as you start driving more and as you go through this journey, I think many of you will find that you start to appreciate things like communication, pedal feel, rotation, weight transfer, balance, delicacy to the various inputs, and not just a one-dimensional metric that is power. And the feeling of being pushed back into your seat when you stomp on the pedal in a straight line, which also is not exciting because it just doesn't require any skill. It's just gets kind of old after some period of time. It's not the first time you go in a Tesla 0 to 60, holy crap. The 100th time, you're like, okay, cool, done this, been there. But when you dance with the car mid-corner, when you're practicing your trail braking, when you're getting a little bit of rotation, a bit of counter steer as well, that's dancing with the car, that's playing with it at the limit. And many cars that are incredibly communicative, like the Emira, can be enjoyed even below the limit. You don't have to even lose traction to still find so much joy from the communication with the machine. I am so glad I got the advice to not buy a Cayman GT4 back in 2020 when I was getting a lot more serious about tracking, and instead to keep tracking my Scion FRS. Because when you have low power, you're actually forced to become a much better driver. And I think my rate of growth and improvement, and trust me, I still got a lot more to grow and improve on when it comes to driving on track, but I went from 0 to a certain level of skill at a much faster pace than what you normally see, simply because I started with a lower power car that was lightweight, that focused on the fundamentals, that allowed me to play with the limit, explore understeer, oversteer, trail braking, etc., and build my skill set over time. Because when you just have power to lean on the track, you just rely on that as a crutch, and you don't actually push the limits in the same way and become a better driver. You're also approaching the limits at much faster speeds in a heavier car mid-corner, which also reduces your level of comfort, increases the risk factor. When you do that in a lighter, cheaper, slower car, it's easier to get to the limit turn after turn after turn, and it's also lower cost, so you can afford to do so as well. Now, this video isn't about Miata Worship, right? I hear the whole Miata is always the answer. It's like, it's an acronym, guys. It's a joke, but people take it way too seriously. They think Miata is the best car. It's the most fun car in the world. Nothing is better than a Miata. And I don't ascribe to that. I actually personally think the Miata is a little bit overrated. I don't hate the car. I bought one and I drive one and I love it for what it is. But I'm also not as gung-ho about Miata being the best fit for every single person, because no car is perfect. It has its strengths and weaknesses. So let me be clear. Power is good, but balance is better. The goal isn't to have a spec sheet that looks good on paper. The goal is to have a driving experience that makes you feel alive behind the wheel. And I'm curious to hear from you guys. What car taught you the most about driving? And if you could do it all over again, would you choose the same car, maybe a fast car, or something that's slower, lighter, and maybe could teach you more finesse and driver skill? Leave a comment down below. Much love, my friends, and I'll see you all in that next one.